We are not mediocre. We are talented, capable, and more than ready to lead. But sometimes it feels like no matter how hard we work, we're walking a tightrope. Too assertive, you're labeled aggressive. Too accommodating, you're overlooked. How did ambition become something we have to explain? We've made incredible progress. More women are stepping into leadership than ever before. And yet, we're also seeing corporate priorities shift, DEI programs fade, and support networks quietly disappear. And through it all, the message remains the same. Be ambitious, but not too much. Speak up, but don't be intimidating. Take the lead, but make sure you're still likable. But here's the truth. We don't need to fit into outdated expectations. We don't need to apologize for our ambition. What we need is a new approach, one that lets us lead on our own terms. In this episode, Dr. Marilyn Clark shares how to navigate the likability trap step into leadership with confidence and build the kind of career that reflects who you truly are. Because ambition isn't the problem, it's the answer. If you've ever struggled with how to show up as a leader without feeling like you're playing by impossible rules, this episode is for you. Let's get started with redefining leadership. Because your ambition isn't just valid, it's necessary.
Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to talk a little bit about new barriers, like what's changing for women in leadership. Just when it seemed like we were getting in the doors and things were finally opening, I guess we're making a difference because now there's like skids, like a broken record going backwards. We're seeing many of these doors quietly closing again, with DEI programs being scaled back and corporate priorities shifting. Are we entering a new era of hidden roadblocks for women in leadership? And what is the most pressing challenges for today? And how do we keep moving forward?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's new. It's a repeat. With my long tenure and working in DEI and working in corporate years ago, I look at it as being secular.
Okay.
And so from my own experience and knowing it was secular, in my corporate career there, DEI had not progressed as far as to where we are today. Because back in those days, we had, diversity committees, and we would do things like ethnic days for ethnic foods or, things like that. And then maybe 10 years later, we moved into more diversity training, tolerance and acceptance. Then you started to see more supplier diversity programs for vendors and a little maybe more programs for what we called high potentials. But still, again, high potentials, I think, was not subjective. So it's secular, and so it will come back around again. We just continue to fight the good fight. The barriers that I see with things that are shifting now in organizations is we may be losing some of the formal DEI programs. They're going to kind of push back on those. We may get reduced support networks like the affinity programs, the mentorship programs that advocate for women. Some of those we may see going away. Accountability when it comes to gender equality. So we just have to keep an eye on it. And as we go through and try and keep in these barriers that may be emerging, I don't think they're going to be long-standing. It's just a matter of we're in another cycle.
Okay. Well, in some ways, that is a relief. I
Sorry?
think it's a relief that we're in a cycle, that we've been here before, and that there's that we just keep going.
Yeah, we keep going.
So how do you as an individual take radical responsibility as we keep going? What are some things that you see successful women doing? And can you maybe give a story?
Building informal networks, peer supports. I think when it comes to leadership skills, we have to think about collective actions.
Mm.
Because if we're not going to have formal actions, then we have to leverage our advocacy. Okay. And we may have to do that from an informal perspective. So one of the things that I think that can counteract setbacks is really looking at industry benchmarks and data, driven arguments that can push the equality, or equitable policies within an organization. We may see where, and when I say about the informal kind of networks, you remember the term the old boys network?
Yes,
Now we need an old girls network.
definitely.
I think that's, so finding those allies, male or female, within, or other leaders that can help, champion, the leadership, and decision-making space. The other thing, we may start to see women in corporate, if corporate becomes more rigid with DEI and pushback, we may find women leaders kind of leaving and looking at opportunities and maybe startups where their voices can be better heard, or entrepreneurship, or some non-traditional career paths.
Gotcha.
Well, we got to continue to advocate, Natalie, for equitable policies, and we got to hold organizations accountable.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did at my company, and I kind of put a pause on it only because I became a little too busy, but now I'm finding other women to help because it can't be just one woman lifting this, is
Right.
I actually would have us get together and talk about one topic and make it like informational. And then we have a discussion around it, maybe a worksheet. And we talked about our values, we talked about our dreams and things like that. Lots of feedback. People are like, I love it. We need to continue. And I think that there's a lot of podcasts like this out there. And if you can't find the content, you could take this podcast or series and other ones. I'm happy to list to listeners, use it.
Right.
That's an informal network you could start, and it's easy.
Yeah.
So as women, we're told that having ambition is a great quality until it isn't. Like, we're told that like as soon as you have ambition and you assert yourself, you're labeled aggressive, unlikable, even too much. And then we shrink within ourselves. And that really isn't the answer. How can women reframe their ambition? Because we're going to need it. And silence that self-doubt and confidently pursue leadership on their own terms.
I kind of think about this ambition as reframing it through a purpose-driven. Don't think of it as an ambition, but it's purpose-driven. So instead of saying I'm seeing as ambition as self-serving, we can reframe it and say it's a commitment to impact, leadership, and creating change. We can, a lot of times you're right, we want to dismantle this likable trap. Women always fall into this likable trap, meaning we're conditioned to agree and accommodate, and then we kind of lead with fear because we don't want to, like you said, be considered too aggressive or too much. So what I think is recognizing that ambition and likability can coexist. Okay. And some strategies that I was thinking about, instead of playing down our successes, we should practice being confident about those accomplishments. And we need to speak up and take space. Okay, whether it's a meeting, if we're negotiating, network space, but we got to practice assertiveness, but without over explaining or apologizing. That sorry, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. No, we don't have to be sorry. And I think we do it, put a quarter in a jar every time you hear yourself say sorry. And here's a story for you. I was working with the CEO, and that was one of her problems, was she said sorry to everything. Even when she made a decision, it was like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why are you sorry that you made the decision? Because the decision was the right decision for whatever the company was getting ready to do, whatever initiative is what, You don't have to be sorry for what you did because you know you're doing the right thing. But it was so ingrained in her that it was so automatic for her. That was something we had to work on, was getting sorry out of her vocabulary because she felt that I always had to apologize for my leadership. And I think we women, we fall into that trap. Okay. The other thing I thought about as far as some other strategies is finding support systems. What I mean by that, surrounding yourself with mentors and sponsors and like-minded peers who will affirm and encourage your ambition. Okay. And think about your power. Why not you? Why not me? Why not me? Instead of asking the question, am I qualified? Flip it around instead and say, why shouldn't I go for this? And I think just having, bringing in that kind of energy or owning your own power and confidence, because you can do it.
Yeah.
You can really do it. And it's just a way of figuring out how to do it. And women getting away from, I got to be perfect. Because if I'm not ambitious, we often feel pressure that we got to be perfect, before I take this big step. And if you wait until you have to be perfect, you're probably not going to take that big step.
Mm-hmm.
So leaving, a way that I don't have to be 100% perfect, because I'm a person that feels we never fail. We just learn.
Yes.
Okay. So if you take that big step and it doesn't work out, that's fine. What did you learn from that? What can I take with me from that can take me to where I do want to go? Maybe I have to, take another curveball, but still don't wait for perfect, because if you wait for perfect, you may never get there.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was at a conference, and there was a gentleman that was there, and this gentleman was talking about how he wanted to sell his company. And so he put his organization out there on the market and started, and he found out that there were business owners, other bigger companies that were more than willing to purchase his company. And he went through all the evaluations, sat down with all these people, and then they would say, we really want to buy your company. We would buy it for this much. But and in his mind, it was a little bit lower than he wanted. And so he was like, well, I really think it's worth this much. And their response is, no, not until you have this and this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And as a response, he ended up not selling his company, but going back and saying, okay, if I want to sell my company for more, then I need to incorporate this and this and this. So as a woman, we could take lessons from that, because put your name in the hat before you're ready. Interview for that position. Number one, you learn more about what is needed to get there if you don't get the job. Second, you might get the job and be surprised that you had it all along. But the other thing is that they learn about you and what your ambitions are and purpose for the organization. So I just wanted to add that in as you were going through your list.
Yeah, right. And I want the takeaway here, I think, Natalie, is, reclaiming ambition really starts with recognizing that it's not a flaw. It's a strength. Okay. And you have to shift the mindset. You have to challenge the social, I would say, expectations, embrace being bold, and you can step into leadership with confidence and inspire others to do the same. Because just like you said, the example that you gave, it's not just about you, it's also about inspiring others to say, I can do this. If that person did it, I can do it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So as we think bigger and we think about taking those bold actions, when it comes to growth, women often are encouraged to play it safe, to focus on the small incremental steps.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this you've already touched on, rather than taking imaginative leaps. What if the key to leadership is thinking beyond what's expected? How can imagination become a strategic tool for breaking through that corporate ceiling?
I think you're right. imagination and strategic risk taking are crucial to career growth. And you have to think of positioning yourself in strategic ways and what I call your self-awareness GPS as far as which way do you want to go. So one thing is think about creating or leading cross-departmental initiatives is one way. Positioning yourself as a thought leader, because we all have something to say. And it doesn't, it could be something as easy as putting something out on LinkedIn. That can be part of your brand. Or you could start with an internal newsletter. A blog can be 2 paragraphs, but it's your thoughts and your knowledge getting out there in the world and people knowing who you are and what experience that you have had. Big picture thinking, okay? If you're in an organization, you want to think about pitching things that would be new, what I call revenue generating ideas, or maybe there's a new market segment. And I have a little story I'd like to tell you about someone that negotiated a role that didn't exist. I worked with a woman and she was really on the fast track, as an executive for some years and had made it to senior vice president. But it got to a point in her career where it was like, what do I want to do now? So what she did was she was very versed in this industry, had held a number of positions in a number of different companies in the same industry, but she found a niche and she wrote her own job description and she pitched it to a company because she found a niche in the industry that most companies did not have this type of revenue generating idea. And she got a job doing this job description niche that she wrote. It was a new initiative. It was something new for the company, but she's doing very well. So a lot of times it's, negotiating a role that doesn't exist, finding that niche that you see, and then being able to pitch that idea to get a position, a leadership position around that niche. I'm so proud of her for doing that.
That
I
is
just
amazing.
really am. But that's one of the examples that I can share with you, one of the stories I can share with you when it comes to career growth. Because she used her imagination. She found this niche in the industry that most companies didn't have this resource, and it's taken off and she's doing very well where she is now.
Yeah, that's great. And the power of imagination and vision.
Right. And I think another thing, instead of always thinking about vertical promotions, sometimes you can pivot to other, what I call high growth business units. Maybe if your company is global and international assignments, where you can expand your influence and your skill set, because that also is going to help your career growth as well. So looking for those opportunities, we always look at, I want to go up, but sometimes, going horizontal can also build you more of a breadth of knowledge base, build your skills that way. So looking for sometimes pivoting and say, well, instead of going up, I think I'll go sideways because I know this is going to help build my skill set. It's going to give me more exposure, right? And I'm going to be, more marketable, put it to you that way. And of course, it's about relationships. But when I say relationships, I want women to understand that we want to, I would say, strategically create or cultivate executive sponsors, not just mentors, but sponsors or advocates for us. And these advocates we want them, how do I say this? We want them to advocate for us in critical leadership discussions. So I don't have anything against mentors, but I also feel inside it's very important in your career growth to have advocates and sponsorship.
I definitely hear you on that. There was a time when I was going for a promotion in my organization. Actually, there were 2 positions open, so I went for both of them. I didn't get either one of those positions. My actual mentor told me that by going for these and not getting them, I was making a fool of myself. Yeah.
You're a kid.
No.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what kind of mentor are you? But at the same time, I had been working on getting those sponsors because I knew that there were discussions that were happening in a room that I wasn't in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had worked with these sponsors and they knew my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Ends up that one of the people that got one of the positions I didn't get quit within 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a discussion in the room. And what my sponsor, who I had developed, said, hey, you guys remember Natalie's out there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then the next day I was called saying, hey, are you still interested?
Look at that.
I
Yeah.
got the role. I got
Right.
it.
Right. Right. So I think ultimately when we're thinking about career goals, you have to have an imaginative, risk-taking, but it doesn't have to be reckless. Okay. It can be strategic, it can be calculated, and it should, of course, be aligned with the company's broader goals. So women who step into these spaces, they demonstrate and do this like you. They don't just demonstrate leadership. I think they are demonstrating leadership in action. And others will see what Natalie did. And it was like, here again, I can do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So there was, for me, some people might be wondering, how do you actually have those conversations? Can you give any advice on that one?
Big conversations with sponsors.
Mm-hmm. How do you develop that?
Well, when I'm thinking about a sponsor, like I said, it's going to be strategic and calculated. And just like you had a mentor that just kind of shot you down,
Mm-hmm.
finding the right sponsor for you, here again, is your self-awareness and your GPS to figure who is going to be the one that is going to support you. And that may take you some time. It may not be the first person you reach out to. It may be someone that says, I don't want to do it. But if you are, I would say, consistent about it and strategic about it and think about, where do I want to go in this career? What path do I want to go? What's my next move? That you will keep at it and find a sponsor that would be willing to sponsor or advocate for you. It could be a boss. It could be someone totally different. I always like to say, like I said earlier, it's good to make relationships in all the areas of your organization. So your sponsorship may not be in your area. It may be in another area of the company. So making those relationships with different leadership folks in other areas of the company, I think, is paramount, because they get to know you and they may be the ones that become your sponsor. So it not necessarily have to be someone in the area that you work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be taking the first bold step towards leadership, with this conversation. And it can feel overwhelming to have these conversations with people that you don't know in different parts of the company, especially when the road ahead seems unclear. Like, the general direction you want to go, but it's not crystal clear. But these bold moves do not have to be complicated. For the women who are listening right now and ready to take bold responsibility for their careers, what is one action she can take today, right after listening, that can make the biggest or have the biggest impact?
Let me think about that for a minute. So we're thinking a little bit about their career move.
Yeah, her career move,
Okay.
finding
All
a
right.
sponsor.
One thing is strengthening your executive presence and strategic visibility. So one thing you may want to do is think about aligning your work with what I call high impact business goals. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to focus on the revenue generating, cost savings, or innovative driven initiatives. So you got to do a little research here. Okay. And understand why this works, because in uncertain times, companies will prioritize results. So if you can find that revenue generating, cost saving, whatever it may be, that can position yourself to be indispensable by trying with your business acumen and also your contributions that's going to give to the business success. Speaking out, finding your voice in meetings. Sometimes we shy away. We feel that if I work hard, I'll get the promotion. It takes more than that. Take on visibility and build relationship with senior leaders. Okay, I'm not going to say all of them will, but why this works is because decision leaders need to see you as a leader before you can get the title.
Yes.
Okay. So visibility ensures that I can be considered because you may say something in a meeting that can be profound that no one else ever thought about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to get you noticed. Stay ahead of trends. Okay. What are emerging skills you're going to need? Like AI is hot right now. Data analysis is hot right now. I'm not saying you have to be an expert at it, but you need to know how it works because these in-demand skills will also be prioritized in a volatile job market. So stay ahead of the industry trends and cultivate a strong personal brand. LinkedIn's an easy place to start. It doesn't, if you like to writing articles, getting published, but LinkedIn, like I said, that's our professional network. And I think starting there is really a good place if you're not quite sure or not, you're not a writer. You do have an opinion. You do have a thought. And sharing those on LinkedIn, I think, is an easy way to get that going. And then, of course, you want to advocate. And I want to make the distinction between finding a sponsor to advocate for your career and a mentor, because there's a difference. And I think you gave us an example of that. Mm-hmm. Because a mentor can only tell you about their experience in a certain area, but a sponsor is the one that can recommend you for the promotions and creatively create opportunities for you as well. Mentors give advice, but sponsors are the one that take action on your behalf. And leverage, this is the other thing. Leverage, I think, build and leverage women networks for power and influence. So that's one of the main things. I can't say enough about network. It's forming and strengthening these women leadership groups, industry alliances, and private peer circles, and knowledge sharing, and having this strategic support. I have a very wide network, and I did a workshop last summer, and it was around, it was called Rituals of Restoration, Support Systems that Women Can Build, and how we build support systems over our lifetime. Even as little girls playing outside in the neighborhoods, we had our girlfriends. They were our support system. In high school, we had support systems, women's support system. In college, we have them. So you continue that on in your adult life and in your professional life. And so what I'm saying is the one thing is in coming to that and strengthening those type of support systems. At the end of the workshop, one of the ladies, because it was a women's workshop, one of the ladies asked me this same question about how do you do that? How do you know who should be the ones that will help support you? Yeah. And I told her, I said, you know what? I know a lot of people, but I have few friends. So when I think about my friends and my truth tellers, those are my networks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know a lot of people, but I don't have a lot of friends. So that's how you can strategically decide who you want to be, who you feel will be your sponsor, and who's going to support you.
Right. That's profound. Now, can you tell us a little bit about if someone wants to work with you, like who those folks are and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, my company, we have 3 lines of business. We do what I call corporate education. So we'll work with organizations when they have maybe enterprise training rollouts. We also do leadership consulting, and I do professional speaking and executive coaching. So I have 2 websites. The company website is www.ccg-solutions.com. And on that website, because I wrote it down just to make sure, there's a link for Let's Talk, and you can fill out a contact. Then my other website, my coaching, what I call my coaching and speaking website is IamMarilynClark.com. And at the top, there is a contact page. And if you fill that out, it will come directly to me, and then I will definitely reach out to you and have a conversation. I'm a coach of service, and so I like to have conversations and see how I can help people.
Excellent. And
yeah.
I'll have those in the show notes.
Okay.
For folks.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on here. There is a lot to unpack. I recommend that listeners download this because you're going to come back and hear something different every time.
Thank you so much for having me, Natalie.
Thank you.
That was powerful. Dr. Marilyn A. Clark just gave us the blueprint for breaking barriers and making ourselves indispensable. Here are the most important steps from Dr. Clark's blueprint first. Generate ideas that deliver revenue, drive innovation, and cut costs. Generating ideas that work will make you indispensable. Second, don't be afraid to fail. Rejection isn't the end. It's the beginning of your growth. Learn, refine, and try again. Third, expand your network. Step beyond your department. Have real conversations. Opportunities are waiting for you where you least expect them. Take the lead. Fourth, don't wait to be chosen. Choose yourself. After hearing this episode, I have to ask, what's one step you can take today to position yourself as a leader? Comment below or share your thoughts with me on LinkedIn. Let's start the conversation. And if this episode resonated with you, hit subscribe and download it because it's packed with great advice you'll want to revisit. Better yet, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. The ripples started as you take flight.